Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our latest coverage from mission here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 1 minute, 12 seconds away from the launch of the Starlink 6-25 mission. At the center of your screen, you're taking a look at a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket at the heart of Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40. This will be the 31st dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 8:17 p.m. Eastern. For our viewers joining around the world, that's 0017 UTC. We'll have support tracking this launch, once again from our friend Chuck Briggs, taking a look at his camera view here. Thanks again, Chuck, for joining us this evening. Also have Pete Carson's providing coverage as well. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that. If you hit the like button, click subscribe if you haven't already to the channel, and ring the bell so you get notifications when new videos are posted and you don't miss any of our live streams. If you weren't following me on X/formerly Twitter, we were also very busy this past week up at the American Astronautical Society's Von Braun Space Exploration Symposium up in Huntsville, Alabama. Great conference there, run by those folks at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. A lot of coverage, some of it already up on our website, and some great video content coming from that in the coming week, maybe week and a half or so from that. Talked to some wonderful folks, including the head of the Human Landing System program, Dr. Lisa Watson-Morgan, was very generous with her time in talking to us about the progress from both SpaceX as well as the Blue Origin-led national team on the landers that will be used for the Artemis missions, Artemis 3, 4, and 5. Coming back to our team here now, Spaceflight Now. Talking about X, if you haven't already, be sure to follow our ace photographers, Michael Kane and Adam Bernstein. You can see their handles on the platform there, just below their profile pictures. Adam is also manning the tracking cameras here at the press site, so pulling double duty. Be sure to give them both a follow and keep an eye out on their pages for some of the launch photography from tonight's mission and others coming down the pike. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now as well. It's an easy handle to remember. It's at Spaceflight Now. At T-minus 58 minutes and counting. Also want to note that we can't do these launch broadcasts without the support of our wonderful viewers as well as our channel members. Folks like Tiffany Atkins, who just joined at the pad leader level. Welcome to channel membership, Tiffany. Glad to have you aboard. Tiffany and our other channel members have access to live 4K views of all of our launches from here at the Cape, as well as access to member-only videos and discounts at our online shop. That is shop.spaceflightnow.com, where we have things like mission patches. Another great way to support our coverage here and to get in on the conversation for this and other upcoming missions is by using the YouTube Super Chat feature like one of our channel members did, Janine De La Sera. Really appreciate the $5 Super Chat with very cute little supportive hippo emoji. So thanks to Janine and for all the folks who jump into the conversation with YouTube Super Chat. Love to read your comments and questions, assuming they are appropriate, so please bear that in mind. And last but certainly not least, want to thank our wonderful moderators like Stephanie B, always working hard, making sure that the live chat stays kosher and on topic, and everyone is able to have a good and engaging conversation as we get closer to the next launch from our Space Coast. Now T-minus 56 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting. Little under 20 minutes away from the point at which the launch director give their go for the start of propellant load for tonight's launch. If you haven't been with us for a recent mission, bit of housekeeping here. SpaceX no longer providing mission audio ahead of the final 5 minutes of the count, but we do have extensive experience covering SpaceX and their Falcon 9 missions, so we'll guide you through the count, talk about some of the visual cues to watch out for, and let you know that things are likely on track. SpaceX is running the countdown from its Hangar X site here at KSC. It's the facility where they refurbish their Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights. Like this one at the center of your screen, that is booster tail number B1077, going for its 8th flight tonight. SpaceX also has support for this launch in part from the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, they are targeting liftoff at 8:17 p.m. Eastern, 0017 UTC. They do have 5 additional backup opportunities in their launch window tonight, running from 8:36 p.m. to 10:47 p.m. Eastern Time. If for some reason they are unable to launch tonight, they have a whopping 8 backup opportunities during a launch window tomorrow that spans from 7:20 p.m. Eastern until 10:22 in the evening. Now T-minus 54 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Want to thank Norman Reitzel for a generous $3 super chat donation. Thank you so much, Norman. Turning to the weather for tonight's launch opportunity. Fairly decent per the 45th Weather Squadron. They forecast an 85% favorable weather for liftoff. The primary concern that they are tracking tonight are liftoff winds and violations of the cumulus cloud rule. They're also keeping an eye on the booster recovery weather, which is being gauged at low to moderate risk. If needed, the backup launch opportunity tomorrow does improve a bit, 90% favorable launch conditions, with cumulus clouds being the only watch item. Now T-minus 53 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. Gave a shout to Stephanie B, one of our great moderators. Also want to thank Astro Joe for always coming in clutch alongside Stephanie B. Appreciate the hard work that you both do, helping to support the live chat as part of our coverage. T-minus 52 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. As we are stepping through the count so far, let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the timeline, looking ahead as we get closer to the T0 time at 8:17 is what is currently being targeted. Coming up at T-minus 38 minutes, that would be the point where we'll hear the results of the go-no-go poll from the launch director, assuming mission audio is going out. Of course it is not, as we mentioned earlier, but that is the point in the timeline when that process happens. If that go is given, the propellant load sequence will begin at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1 or rocket-grade kerosene onto both the first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen will also be pumped aboard the first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen will start flowing onto the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. Before that, at about 2020, we'll see the big vent from the strong back at the launch pad as the feed lines are chilled. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will get underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. It's important because it protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence begin. It'll start with the clamp arms opening up, and then the transporter erector or the strong back will lean away from the Falcon 9 rocket about 1.5 degrees. It'll stay in that position until liftoff. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen should be fully loaded onto the vehicle, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. 45 seconds out, the SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And then if all is going well, the engines are healthy and ignite correctly, the flight computer will give the hold down clamps the command to release the Falcon 9 for a liftoff at T-minus 0 seconds, currently targeting, again, 8:17 tonight. 0017 UTC for those joining around the world. That liftoff time, now just over 50 minutes away. Now T-minus 48 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. I want to thank Matthew Lowry for a very generous $10 super chat donation. Really appreciate that, Matthew. Super chats, while appreciated in general, are also very helpful for us as we are working towards our goal of continuously improving and upgrading our equipment to increase the quality of our live streams here at Spaceflight now, and work towards a goal of adding additional cameras as well as increasing the quality of those cameras so that we can bring more continuous 4K views to our audience at large. So thank you to Matthew and to our channel members for helping us get closer to that goal. Now T-minus 48 minutes and counting. T-minus 47 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. Before we get to the trajectory of this mission, want to thank one of our wonderful moderators, Astro Joe, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership to Sandra Peller. Sandra, like our other channel members, now has access to our 4K views from all of our launches here at the Cape, as well as access to member-only videos. So thanks to Astro Joe for helping spread the love, and for Steve Martin for joining channel membership at the mission specialist level. Believe the full moon was formally yesterday, but we are seeing the moonrise now reflecting on the waters just across from the press site here. A nearly full moon and a beautiful sight. You know, our Michael Kane, one of our photographers, is working on trying to get a transit shot from launch. So again, if you're not already following him on X, keep an eye out for that, and hopefully everything will align tonight and we'll get some really cool launch photography from this one. No T-minus 46 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. Working on bringing you some live pictures of the moon from our vantage points. See if we can get those, but a little tricky. But do want to thank GizmoFish57 for joining with channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the support. Welcome aboard. Now T-minus 43 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Took us just a second to get everything framed up right, but here's the moonrise that I was talking about just a minute or two ago. On the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, that's the fishbowl here at the press site. For some perspective, our little office overlooking the launch pads across the way here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Now T-minus 42 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. Before we peel away, just want to make note the little dot at the top of your screen just to the left of the countdown clock. That is, in fact, the gas giant Jupiter. Taking a look at the trajectory of tonight's mission. Falcon 9 will lift off from the pad at Slick 40, of course at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. As with the rest of the launches heading into the Group 6 shell, it will fly in a southeast trajectory towards the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage booster will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one on deck tonight is just read the instructions. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison a bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen. SpaceX will use one of its recovery vessels to scoop up those fairing halves. Tonight, they're using Bob. It, of course, with the other recovery ship, Doug, were named after the duo who flew the Demo 2 mission, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, back in May 2020. Now T-minus 41 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. T-minus 40 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Before we go ahead and take a preview of the mission stats, that'll be counted as we close out this launch when it happens. I want to thank Rhett McCrellis for joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Thank you so much, Rhett. And apologies if I mispronounced your last name there. And want to thank Mel Roberts Harold for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Mel. Welcome back. Says, hey, y'all, getting to watch from a backyard in Cocoa. One of the benefits of living here on the Space Coast. Says, just got back from seeing the Air Force Thunderbirds and now a launch. Back to chilly Chicagoland at the crack of dawn, though. Yes, I know the plight of lots of travel, having just returned from Huntsville myself just this afternoon. Safe travels, and hope you enjoyed the air show. I know a lot of photographers from around Central Florida got some great pictures from up there, including our own Michael Caine. Now T-minus 39 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. Again, we're about a minute away from the point at which the launch director would give the results of the go, no, go for the start of propellant load. We will not hear that directly, but be sure to keep a weather eye on the rocket here at about T-minus 35 minutes. That's, again, when the start of propellant load will actually begin. We'll see a frost ring start to form near the bottom of the first stage. It's usually right about, if you're taking a look at the base of the rocket, at the very heart of your screen, you see there's a section that's a little more in black, and then there's sort of a charcoal gray section, and then a little bit of a line with a lighter gray. Right around where the charcoal gray meets the lighter gray, that's usually about where we start to see that frost ring start to form. So watch that part of the rocket starting around 3 minutes from now. Taking a look at where this mission will fall again once this Falcon 9 rocket launches. This will mark the 8th flight of this Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1077. This will be the 268th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 74th Falcon 9 launch of 2023. The 212th Falcon booster reflight. That is a launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This will be SpaceX's 78th orbital launch for this year, their 90th in the last 365 days. This will be launch 151 from Pad 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the 206th overall orbital launch from that launch pad. And it will be the 59th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. That is between both the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station as well as NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Last weekend, we eclipsed the total number of launches from 2022 with the 58th, so every new launch pushes that record up even further for Florida-based orbital launches. Now T-minus 36 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. About a minute and a half away from the start of propellant load, assuming SpaceX is in fact targeting a T0 liftoff at 8:17. And once we start to see the signs of propellant loading beginning, or we hear word directly from SpaceX, that will commit them to the 8:17 liftoff time. Again, that fueling will get underway. We're expecting less than a minute from now. If they do decide that they want to hang on and target one of their backup opportunities, of course, we won't see the frost starting to form. They do have 5 backup opportunities during this current window, starting at 8:36, running till 10:47 p.m. Eastern. Again, if they do not start fueling, that would commit them to a 8:17 liftoff. That fueling expected to begin in about 10 seconds. Now T-minus 33 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. We do have confirmation from SpaceX. The propellant load has in fact begun for tonight's launch attempt, sending up 23 Starlink satellites, meaning that SpaceX is committed to going for the launch at 8:17 p.m., the start of the window. Which, for those who have work tomorrow and don't want to stay up super late to watch the launch, is, of course, good news. Now T-minus 33 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. With fueling officially underway, again, keep an eye on the Falcon 9 for signs of frost and some vapor as the cool temperatures of the liquid oxygen meet the very humid Florida air, from little vapor around the Falcon 9 rocket. Now T minus 32 minutes, 15 seconds. You can start to see that vapor ring I was mentioning forming right about where I said it would be, where the lighter gray part of the rocket meets the more charcoal gray. Of course, all the soot on the Falcon 9 first stage is because this particular first stage, B-1077, has flown 7 times before, going for its 8th flight tonight. Coming up in 31 minutes, 48 seconds. Now T minus 31 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. This view of Slick 40 coming to us from our friend Chuck Briggs. If you take a look on the left-hand side of the Falcon 9 rocket, you see there the crew and cargo access tower, which has been slowly being built up, both literally and figuratively. From the last time we had a launch here, you notice that there are some lights now within the tower. Another step towards making this a functional alternative to the launch capabilities at Launch Complex 39A, SpaceX's other launch pad here in Florida. Once completed, it will allow SpaceX and NASA to launch Dragon missions, both crew and cargo. Though it is dark, you may see that this tower currently lacks a crew access arm, an important piece that will be added, as well as an emergency egress system like they have over at 39A. That's the basket system that will allow support crew as well as astronauts, should they be flying on that mission, to quickly be able to leave the tower in the case of an emergency before they are fully strapped into their Dragon. It's an important safety component that's at all of the crew launch sites here in Florida. You can see similar systems over at Slick 41. That's ULA's pad, since they support launches of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. They're also in the process of finishing adding the emergency egress system to Launch Complex 39B here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. That will support crewed missions of the Artemis program using the Space Launch System rocket and the Orion spacecraft. Now T minus 29 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. You can start to see a little bit of vapor forming from this perspective, billowing away from the Falcon 9 rocket there. We're seeing the back of the transporter erector. You can see the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings up top. At this point, for about the last 2 minutes, helium loading has been underway as well into the pressure vessels on the first stage. The helium helps to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Now T minus 27 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. Really appreciate the nearly, just over 6,800 of you that are watching live. If you haven't already, there's a great and easy way to support what we do here with our live launches. If you just hit the like button, that allows the YouTube algorithm to send this out and allow more folks to find our live coverage. as we are now less than 30 minutes away from the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-25 mission, sending up 23 Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. This is the second time that SpaceX has launched a batch of 23 of these Starlink V2 minis. Larger and heavier than their version 1.5 counterparts. Earlier this morning, SpaceX launched 22 of these Starlink V2 mini satellites from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. It was also the first time that they had launched a batch of 22 Starlink V2 minis from the West Coast. A T-minus 26 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. T-minus 26 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. As we continue to step through the countdown process, let's go ahead and take a look at the flight history of this booster. B-1077, as I mentioned, this will be its 8th flight tonight. Let's wind back the clock and see how we got here, shall we? Its first mission happened to be the launch of a 4-person crew that was on the Crew 5 mission to the International Space Station on October 5th, 2022, just over a year ago. They launched aboard the Dragon-named Endurance. This was a distinct mission for a couple of reasons. It was commanded by NASA astronaut Nicole Mann, who became the first indigenous woman to go to space. This was also the first time during the commercial crew program era of human spaceflight that a Russian cosmonaut flew to the International Space Station on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. Next launch came on January 18th, 2023, for the launch of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle 06 satellite. The series of GPS satellites were manufactured by Lockheed Martin and were nicknamed for famous explorers. SV-06 was named Amelia Earhart. Launch number 3 was a month later, February 18th, when it launched the Inmarsat 6 F2 satellite. Back in August, Viasat released a statement saying that that satellite, quote, suffered a power subsystem anomaly during its orbital raising phase. Viasat acquired Inmarsat back in May of this year. Moving right along, the 4th launch of this booster was back on March 29th when it launched the 56 satellites on the Starlink 5-10 mission. It was followed up by another cargo, or another Dragon flight, this one of the cargo variety, on June 5th. For the Commercial Resupply Services 28 mission. Sent up 7,000 pounds of research and supplies to the ISS, including 2 roll-out solar arrays. The 6th launch came on August 3rd when it launched the Galaxy 37/Horizons 4 satellite for Intelsat as part of the company's Constellation refresh to meet FCC requirements. And finally, the 7th launch was September 1st when it launched 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites on the Starlink 6-13 mission. And as we are just past technically the full moon, want to bring you a fantastic shot of our own satellite from our spaceship Earth. Close up looking at the northern hemisphere of our wonderful moon. Of course, the south pole of the moon is the hot ticket in town these days. Intuitive Machines is going to be sending its Nova C lander down to the moon's south pole. That launch now targeting January 12th, no earlier than, launching aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Getting some amazing detail here from Pete Carson's panning down on the right-hand side of the moon. Just some exquisite detail. As we come up on T-minus 22 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. About a couple minutes away from the big vent there. Now trucking around the southern hemisphere of the moon here. coming up in December, United Launch Alliance is hoping to launch its Vulcan rocket for the first time with another moon-bound mission on board. That is Astrobotic's Peregrine lander. It is currently on the road here to the Cape, getting ready to be prepared for a launch that is targeting Christmas Eve, December 24th. Both of those missions are part of the commercial resupply services, or excuse me, the commercial lunar payload services, CLIPS. There's a lot of acronyms to keep track of. Part of supporting the overall Artemis program for NASA. Now T-minus 21 minutes, 21 seconds and counting, about a minute away from the start of the big vent here. You'll see from the strong back, another good visual sign that the fueling continues to be on course. It'll be followed up at T-minus 16 minutes when liquid oxygen starts flowing onto the second stage. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. We see the big vent beginning as fueling marches on. This view coming from Chuck Briggs. T-minus 19 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. So we're taking a tour of the skies above. Let's go ahead and take a peek at one of our other solar system neighbors out there, this being Jupiter, and you can see some of its moons to the right and the left of it. These views coming from Pete Carson, so thank you so much, Pete, for bringing us back our views of Jupiter this evening. As we're approaching 8 o'clock here on the East Coast. Now T-minus 18 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 16 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. The big vent has wrapped up, and LOX loading on the Falcon 9 second stage is about to begin in about 10 seconds or so. As we continue to move on, let's talk a little bit about the launch vehicle itself. SpaceX's workhorse vehicle, the Falcon 9, standing tall at 70 meters, 229 feet, with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is made up of the first stage of the rocket. This one is booster tail number 1077 in the SpaceX fleet. At the bottom of all Falcon 9 rockets are the 9 Merlin engines, which burn a combination of rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, SpaceX is using the drone ship. Just read the instructions tonight. Above that first stage is the inner stage, a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side, you see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it falls through the atmosphere like a massive dart towards that drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also important with the inner stage, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside until the inner stage adapter is removed at stage separation. Now T-minus 14 minutes, 20 seconds. Moving on up to that second stage. It's the upper stage of the Falcon 9, powered by that single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix as the first stage, RP-1 and LOX. It will ignite a third time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites for a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere while it will burn up. It eliminates the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. And last but not least, at the very top of the rocket are those payload fairings containing the 23 Starlink satellites. They're made up of a carbon composite material and are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The 2 halves of the payload fairings will be recovered by the recovery vessel a little further downrange of the drone ship. They splash down under parachutes. And like the first stage, they will be brought back into Port Canaveral, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights. Now T-minus 12 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Now less than 12 minutes to the planned liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-25 mission. Still getting some stellar views of the moon from Pete Carson's tracking camera. It'll have eyes on the Falcon once it heads skyward. But for now, it's providing us with some great detail on the moon above, as we are just past technically the fullest of the full moon. but still quite full tonight. Now T-minus 11 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Want to talk a little bit about the payload that's on board this mission. That is the 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites. This photo you see there at the center of your screen is from when they were in their pre-flight configuration before another Starlink launch. This will be the 31st launch of these V2 minis and the 51st Starlink launch this year. Each of them comes in at about 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms. After the solar panels unfurl, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers. Were built in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. To date, SpaceX hasn't published a rendering or photo of the V2 mini Starlink satellites in their operating configuration. We do have this photo of one taken while in orbit from the Australian company HEO Robotics from one of its satellites. This was taken earlier this year, and they claim this was the first direct observation of a Starlink V2 mini in its flight configuration. Here you can see those two solar panels extending from the main body of the satellite. Now T-minus 9 minutes, 33 seconds and counting, till 23 more of these head skyward. And with tonight's launch, there will be more than 5,000 Starlink satellites on orbit. Now T-minus 8 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Taking a peek at the live chat. Want to thank one of our channel members, Norman Reitzel, for the $5 super chat donation, saying that was a great shot of the 3 Jovian satellites. Agreed. Thanks to Pete Carstens for that. $10 super chat from Phil Zhang with a very supportive looking, I still think that's a corgi, but it could be a fox. Thank you so much, Phil. Our thanks to Kathy Foley for generous $20 super chat donation. Same to one of our regulars here. Another $20 super chat donation from Alan Gable. Thank you so much, Alan. Saying awesome moon, Pete. Giving Pete his flowers for a fabulous shot of the moon. And Norman once again asking, why did SpaceX switch from Krypton thrusters to Hall effect argon thrusters? While we don't have total and complete insight to that, Norman, we do know that it is a cheaper gas. And with SpaceX launching so many of these satellites, of course, creating ways that they can still maneuver on orbit as they need to while reducing cost is something that I would imagine SpaceX is certainly interested in doing. And last but not least, right now, thanks to Richard Costo for $10 super chat donation. Thank you so much, Richard, and to everyone else for supporting our coverage. At T-minus 6 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. While we certainly very much welcome and appreciate the super chat donations and those who join with channel membership, Want to also thank the 18,000 plus of you who are joining us live. If you haven't already, there's another quick and easy way to support us here that is free just by hitting the like button. It allows more people to find our coverage as we come up on the final 6 minutes of the count. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. Things continue to look good for a liftoff coming up at 8:17 p.m. this evening. The next step, that big milestone, will be the strong back retract coming up in less than 30 seconds. Now T-minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds. The start of the strong back retract happening in real time. Want to make a quick note for our viewers here.
Strong back lower process has started.
I hear the call out for the start of the strong back retract beginning. We'll start with the clamp arms opening up just underneath the payload fairings. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. See those arms opening. And a really nice view of that crew and cargo access tower with a lot more illumination that we can see. As I was mentioning, those lights now installed. There's a really good view of what future launch crews as well as potentially astronauts will see as they ascend up Pad 40's crew and cargo access tower for future Dragon flights. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. What I was starting to say a moment ago is our countdown clock is a little bit ahead of what you see on SpaceX's view. That's because our clock is in real time and the SpaceX countdown clock is on a slight delay from its stream. So just want to make a note of that. That I may make some call outs in real time, but you'll see them in slight delay from SpaceX. Now T-minus 3 minutes and counting. Want to briefly thank Nelson Reyes for a $10 super chat saying thanks for the great coverage. And to Roger Hurt for a $5 super chat asking for a shout out for Riley Hurt for his first ever launch viewing. Super excited, and his birthday is on Halloween. Well, very happy early birthday to you, Riley. Hope you're enjoying your very first launch. Hopefully it'll be a good one from wherever you're checking it out from. Thanks for being with us.
Stage 1 lock load complete.
You're the call out. Lock load complete. Now less than 2.5 minutes to lift off. Next call in about 45 seconds. You should hear LOX loading wrapping up on the second stage, at which point the Falcon 9 will be fully fueled. Now less than 2 minutes to lift off.
Stage 2 lock load complete.
And there you're the call out for Stage 2 LOX loading complete. The Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. We'll see some venting from the launch pad as SpaceX purges the strong back propellant lines prior to liftoff. You see that underway right now as we speak. At T-minus 1 minute, 18 seconds and counting.
Ground gas closeout.
Coming up at T-minus 1 minute, the Falcon 9's flight computers will take control. Stages 1 and 2 will pressurize for flight. The onboard computer will perform checks of the first stage engine steering system. Now less than a minute to liftoff. Everything appears to still be on track for that on-time departure at 8:17 p.m.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
At T-minus 45 seconds, should be hearing the launch director call out, go for launch, momentarily.
Go for launch.
There you hear that call out. Now T-minus 27 seconds and counting. The Falcon 9 is cleared to launch. We'll see thousands of gallons of water dumped onto the launch pad to protect the vehicle from the reflected sound waves. Now T-minus 15 seconds in real time. Coming up in the last 10 seconds. Here we go. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Well, no ignition. We have a hold. Standing by to hear more from SpaceX. We did not see engine ignition. Because SpaceX did fully fuel the Falcon 9 rocket and go all the way through the count, they will not have enough time to turn around the rocket for another launch attempt this evening. We did not hear an audible hold call, but again, as we saw, the 9 Merlin engines on the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket did not, in fact, ignite. Standing by for more from SpaceX.
This launch director contact. We had an abort on stage SEP, center pusher accumulator pressure slope check during terminal count. We'll be setting up for a 24-hour recycle. We are scrubbed for a launch attempt this evening.
And there you heard from SpaceX that they are unfortunately having to stand down from tonight's launch attempt. They will go through a 24-hour recycle and set up for another go at this in 24 hours. Again, those launch opportunities, they have 8 of them in the window tomorrow. That begins at 7:20 p.m. Eastern. That's 23:20 UTC, and runs until 10:20 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. So again, an unfortunate scrub right at the last moment from SpaceX. Unable to launch the Falcon 9 rocket this evening, and no double launch day for the company. This would have been the 3rd back-to-back launches for SpaceX this month, but they will go ahead and stand down for tonight. They will drain the propellants from the Falcon 9 rocket, safe the vehicle, and prepare for a future flight attempt tomorrow. Well, while certainly not the outcome that we were hoping for this evening, we do want to thank all of you who joined us for our live coverage tonight. Again, SpaceX did call the abort just before engine ignition. We hope you will join us again tomorrow evening for SpaceX's next launch attempt for this Starlink 6-25 mission. Really appreciate all of you who are here tonight. Thanks to the support from Pete Carsons and Chuck Briggs, standing by at the ready, bringing us some great celestial views as we were anticipating liftoff tonight, as well as to Michael Caine, Adam Bernstein, ready as always to try and capture some great launch photography. Back in action again tomorrow evening. Stephen Young for running the technical aspects of the broadcast. Emil Robinson-Smith for Spaceflight Now. Again, thanks to all of you who are with us tonight. Hope you join us once again tomorrow for the next launch attempt of the Starlink 6-25 mission. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you next time.